Welcome to P English Literature, a YouTube channel that conveys Amazon, Goodread, blog, and video book reviews coupled with interviews with authors. It's a perfect channel for book lovers, authors, and writers generally. P English Literature, the exact channel for you and me.
Hi there, viewers. Today I'm joining in conversation with Gregory Ramsey, the author of Ducks After Death, Manner of the Mage, Book 1. So it's a pleasure to have Mr. Gregory on the line. Hi there, Mr. Gregory.
Hi, Peter. I'm so happy to be here with you on P English Literature.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure having you. It's really a pleasure. But before we move into the interview, I would like you to have some presentation to us. The Crown Swings Open for me, one of the songs you performed for your debut book. I don't know if you can just give us a 1 minute of presentation about that. That'll be fine.
I would love to. You're going to sing with me, right?
Well, of course, I'm going to sing with you.
Fantastic. All right. I think I'll play a couple bars introduction and then we can start singing. Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
The coffin swings open for me tonight, and I float gently to my feet, and I don't ever care. There's not a care in the world for, so take to the street with caution. Don't strike confidently very often, 'cause the guy's just gotta eat. Yeah, I just gotta drink. I'm just an animal who feeds on mammals, the ones who bleed. I'm just an animal who feeds on mammals, the ones who bleed.
That's great. That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Very fun to do that. I hope it sounds good via Zoom.
Yeah, it actually sounds good. And it's a very funny kind of song, especially the lyrics that has to do with I'm just an animal that feeds. I'm just an animal that feeds. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So without wasting much of time, Mr. George, I would like to dive into the interview.
Okay.
And my first question on the list would probably have to be the first time. I don't know if there was a first time you get acquainted with writing. Like, when was the first time you realized you're gonna become an author?
I'm not sure when I knew I was going to become a writer, but I always was interested in reading and writing in my life. Like from a very, very young age, my mother would read to me every night before bed, which was a nice little ritual. And we read all kinds of stuff, Newbery Award-winning books, like serious kind of children's fiction. And also we read a lot of like Hardy Boys mysteries. I don't know if you ever read any of those, but the first time I ever tried to write like a fiction story myself, I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I wrote kind of a Hardy Boys style mystery. I don't remember much about it, but it was basically like, something went missing. The main character has to go do a little detective work and, solve the mystery. So, yeah.
That's actually fun. That's really a great one. Most people don't really have the time. They don't really tell the time you get acquainted with writing, but it's just something we just get to do all of a sudden. All right, that's about that. I would also like to ask you because most people, your novel, it's actually a fiction novel. Like it's not a reality. It's not non-fiction. And some people, some writer often have this kind of conception that writing fiction could be much more difficult, could be time consuming, could be some people, because they felt that fiction is actually a total work of imagination, and they compared to nonfiction, which most times is based on real life stories. And I just want to ask you that how will you view what does it for you like writing fiction? Do you consider it a difficult task, or you feel it as an easy thing? Because most time, to me, fiction is something that is much more difficult compared to nonfiction, because nonfiction could be historic, nonfiction could be a real life story of a particular, maybe an autobiography, etc. So I want to ask you, how did you come about writing fiction novel, and was it a difficult thing for you, or you find it very easy to do?
Yeah, I don't know. Nonfiction for me can be very difficult to write. Like, I can write about myself, like a memoir or something like that in terms of nonfiction, but in terms of research nonfiction with citations and stuff, that all seems pretty daunting to me. It seems like a huge task to do all the research, cite it properly, etc. Fiction comes much easier to me, but again, it's something I've been attempting since I was very young. And it has taken years and years and many, many attempts for me to complete a book. I went to college. My undergrad degree is in fiction writing. For that degree, I had to write several long movements, like 60 to 100 pages, or whatever that equates to, like 40,000 to 50,000 words. And I don't know, I've started 2 or 3 other novels that I never completed. So, yeah, they're just kind of hanging out. I've got one that's 200 pages or so that is basically finished, and I just don't like that much. Like, it didn't really come together right. It's not organized very well. So I just kind of abandoned it. With Manner of the Mage, I decided to do something that I felt would be accessible to readers. Vampires are very popular. They're something I've always been interested in. And I just decided to write something that I would be interested in. And this book came much easier to me than anything I've written in the past. It took maybe a year to write, and it just came out kind of in sequence, chronologically, and was much easier than previous attempts I've had. And I don't know what the secret is. It's just, I think, finding a project that works for you, that you can stay confident with in order to get through it.
Wow, that's actually very great. I'm really excited to know about that. And you actually read it in your About the Author page that, he lives outside of Chicago, where his majority of time is spent being a stay-at-home father of 2 young girls. And he has a bachelor degree in fiction writing from Columbia College, Chicago. Right. I think that I was, since you have this kind of, qualification, I can really say that you're good. You're a good fiction writer. That's actually very, very impressive. Because, me, I thought fiction is something that is much more difficult, because you have to start imagining, you have to start thinking how a particular plot is fixed in, etc., etc. So definitely. Another thing I would like to ask you about this book is, vampires is often considered as, writing about vampire is often considered as a hard nut to crack. Like, I can just imagine people writing about vampire, and because of some research associated with it, because writing about vampire is actually difficult in my own perception, because of the research associated with it. So I want to ask you, what inspired you to write about this theme? If there's anything that inspired you to write particularly about vampire theme?
Sure. Well, again, I've always loved vampires growing up. When I was like a teenager, one of my favorite shows was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think you mentioned in one of our communications, the originals maybe, or Vampire Diaries. I love those shows. I've watched every single episode of those shows. I don't know. I was always into Anne Rice. All of the Vampire Chronicles books I have read. The Vampire Lestat is one of my favorite books. Dracula, of course, is a huge influence. But for me, the reason, apart from my interest, that I chose to write about vampires is that there's unlimited story potential. These are beings that have been alive for in some cases hundreds, or mine thousands of years. And so, you know, you can kind of dive deep into history and unlock hundreds of years of stories, you know, so that is really interesting. They're also, you know, like a good monster or anti-hero type character that you have that still has mostly human qualities. So, you know, like vampires have mostly human emotions, and, you know, they basically behave as humans, but they also are a plague on humanity. So in many ways, I find vampires very interesting. And again, when I chose to write this, I wanted something that I thought might be more marketable, because some of my previous books were just kind of like, I don't know, like artsy and not extremely focused. So that was one motivation that I had, is that vampires are popular. But I'm glad that I did it, because now that I've started the sequel and I've started, you know, a spin-off short story series for Amazon Vella, it's kind of amazing how many different time periods I can cover the same characters in. You know, I built a universe that I can literally follow for thousands of years if I want to. So
That's fantastic. I really love that.
Yeah.
That's kind of a good sort of motivation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, another thing I would like to ask you about Dust After Death is, you know, what I actually find intriguing about this book is the plot and the characterization. There's a way it's switched from one protagonist to another. You take, for instance, a chapter will talk about the archaeologist, Dr. Joe Blasenfield and Dr. Sally, and the next chapter will talk about Sophia, you know, a mother, Tiama Cox, Rico, Marquette, etc. And the next chapter talks about, you know, the archaeologist, the Blasenfield and Brandley. You know, I actually find the setting, this plot, this characterization, this twisting very, very impressive, and it's something that I've not really found more important about most novels. So I was curious to ask you why you thought this settings, this plot is vexed, and why you consider it as really a kind of a vexed method of setting. If there's anything how do you think this writing style make a good novel?
Yeah, so in this case, it just kind of worked out that way for me. I've read some novels that follow multiple protagonists, often in first person, and mine is in third person, and they'll be like labeled at the beginning of the chapter. This one is from this character's point of view, the next chapter is from this character's point of view. I didn't do that, as you know, from reading it. But kind of the way the story worked out in my mind as I was thinking about it was that I had to awaken this family destiny curse in Sophia by awakening the vampire, right? The dormant vampire. And so to me, it made sense geographically to have two different locations where the story takes place, both where the vampire Barabista is and where, you know, the protagonist Sophia is. And because of the geographical location, I couldn't have, from Sophia's point of view, her discovering the vampire or anything about what was happening in the archaeological camp. So I just decided to do basically two different storylines, following the archaeologist that, you know, revives the ancient vampire, Barabista, and then following Sophia's experience where her kind of new magical powers are awakened and her destiny is being revealed. And I thought that it would be really cool if those two stories could, you know, like through geographical travel, could eventually converge in the same location at the same time. And I feel that it really worked out in this book. And I feel that it would have been a completely different story had I chosen to stick with just one of the characters primarily. But in the second book, right now, it follows kind of several different main characters. So it's not even just two in the second one. It flips between like five. Wow. So we'll see. We'll see if I keep it that way, or if it ends up like too confusing for readers. I'm not sure at this point, you know.
Yeah, that's actually great. I love that. You know, when I read it, I was like, this is a very good kind of setting. And you seems to have a kind of good planning already. I love that. It's quite very admirable. I so much enjoyed it. The book is actually very interesting. I love it for others.
Thank
Another thing I like to ask of this book, Man of the Mage, is that the book is a subtle book that is rich in methodology. It's rich in linguistics other than English language, because I realized that there's a place you spoke about ancient Egyptians, and there's a place that's also rich in archaeological, what's it called, indulgence. That's a conversation between the protagonist to the other. So I'm very curious when I read through this book, and I was like, I want to ask you if you're an archaeologist, if you're in any way an archaeologist, or you're in any way in linguistics, because or you just felt that these characteristics are just an absolute work of intense research.
Yeah, so I have certainly an interest in history and archaeology, but I have no real scientific background at all. So anything relevant to those things, I just Google. Also, the like Latin language or Egyptian language segments that happen, it's basically Google Translate. However, my mother has a master's degree in linguistics. She taught at a community college for her whole career. She's retired now, but she taught both English as a second language and linguistics. So she's my primary editor, both because of that credential, and also she helps make the linguistic things a little more realistic, I think, for me. It's not something that I'm necessarily expert at, but with the help of my mother and Google, I can come up with a fairly realistic, language or, linguistic. Mythology is one of my biggest. Mythology is one of my biggest interests in life. I think that globally, there's so many different cultures with so many different mythologies. It's absolutely fascinating, especially when, like, you think about cultures like across the world from one another often have very similar creation myths or similar myths about vampires, or, I just think it's very interesting. It's not, again, something that I have any formal schooling in, but I have read tons and tons about mythology throughout my life.
Well, that's fantastic. That's so fantastic. And I love that. I really love that. And another thing I would like to ask about just after that, it's actually a book that falls under horror movie. And it's actually an amazing horror novel that it's one of the amazing horror novels that I've ever read, to be sincere. And it's actually read like a movie. That's one of the characteristics that I find very amazing about it, is because it reads like a movie as the plot keeps going, and the twist and everything is actually very fun. So, and I consider it a book that is good for filmmakers, like people who make movie. I think it would be a good sort of script for them. And then concerning this, I'm actually curious because you've written on the theme of vampire. I want to ask you if vampire really exists, or they are just mere superstition, or they're just mere phenomenon, or they're just, some kind of superstitious creatures.
Yeah, as far as I know, vampires are totally, fictional. And I really appreciate everything you said about it reading like a movie. I've heard that a few times, and I was going for that, so it really makes me feel good. I think part of that is just that it's told in present tense also. When the action's happening like in present tense, live in front of you, you feel more immersed in it maybe than the traditional past tense tellings of books. On the other hand, some people get turned off, I think, when they're reading a book in present tense because they're very used to reading past tense books. So I worried when I was initially publishing that I might alienate certain readers by doing that, but I was hoping for the effect of making it more immersive, like you're feeling the action in real time. So that's really, I'm glad that that worked for you and for some other people anyway. That's really cool. And again, as far as I know, vampires don't exist, but the mythology has existed forever. If you just do like a Wikipedia search, Mesopotamians had like demons that ate blood. Ancient Greeks had demons that ate blood. Persians, Assyrians, there's different Native American tribes that had mythology about blood-sucking demons. Even in the 90s in like South America and Mexico, there's a being called the chupacabra, who, like, I don't know what it looks like, but it's supposed to suck out the blood of livestock through its neck. And they used to find whole fields of livestock dead with their like blood sucked out through a hole in their neck. So I don't know, part of me likes to believe that they might be out there. Part of me likes to think that, all of these different cultures can't come up with the same, vampire myth or a very similar myth without there being some actual credence to it. But, really, I just think it's good story material.
That's actually great. I've actually been watching them on movies, and when I got to read about your book, I was like, oh, I think I need to ask Mr. George if vampire really exists or not.
Yeah,
that's actually fun.
I recently read also an article that suggested that even Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, based that on real events that had happened nearby in Scotland and England in the 1800s to him. So he just kind of, according to the article, maybe believed that they existed, and he created a fictional story based on it. So who knows if that's true, but it's interesting. And yeah,
That's great. That's it. Now it just seems as if we cannot really give a scientific proof if they really exist or not.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. Until I see one in person, there's no decisive proof.
Maybe in future time we get to know more about that. All right, thank you about that. Another thing I'd like to ask you about just after that is that the tone of the book. You have a distinctive tone, techniques of storytelling. The author's tone is quite excellent, and the setting of the novel is superb. I'd like to ask you if you take this straight over a particular author. And if yes, I'd like to know the name of the author and how the author's writing influenced yours.
Yeah. So when I first read this question, I thought kind of a lot about it. It's really hard to say directly, who my style is most reminiscent of, but I've read my entire life, as I mentioned before, and like in college, I read a lot of literary fiction. I read a lot of early 20th century American fiction, like Faulkner or Willa Cather or Ernest Hemingway. I mentioned before, I really liked the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. So, lately, when I've been reading to my children. We've been reading like Nancy Drew mysteries. The last couple years before I started writing this book, I got really into young adult fiction for the first time since I was young myself. So there is a Scholastic author, Jennifer Nielsen, who writes really young adult stuff that's fantasy. And I don't think my style is like really any of these people. I like to think that I took a little bit from every author that I've read, or, made some kind of, my own style based on different voices that I'd come across over life. But I do want to credit the young adult authors that I've read recently with giving me confidence to do it again. because, the interesting thing about young adult is it's mostly plot based. It's very action oriented. And I don't feel like they worry so much about having exactly the correct word in exactly the correct moment. It's just tell the story, tell it effectively, and tell it with high action. And so after reading several young adult books, I kind of feel like, oh, I can do that. It feels much more accessible to me. Because really the ultimate thing that you're looking for out of a book is a good story that captivates you. And, if you're not so worried about every little nuance, it's much easier to create that, I think.
That's great. That's very fantastic. We can also say that we have a particular voice. We just have to, as author, we have to create our voice ourselves. I get to know, our tone and, put it out there so that probably people can also look up to us as authors. I really love that. I love the concept.
Absolutely.
I love Dr. After Death, and there's a particular part I love most. That's the ending part of it. So this made me want to ask you more about the progress of your next publication, because this book, as I said, this is the first book of the series of Dr. After Death, book one. So I don't know if you can tell us more about the progress of your next book. Is it almost finishing, or are you just starting it up, or are you publishing it tomorrow?
Yeah. Dust After Death book 2 is right now just over 55,000 words. Book 1 was 97,000 or so. So it's a little over halfway done. I'm hoping to keep them pretty much the same length as I go through the series. It's similar in many ways. It follows, a kind of archaeological findings after magical objects and stuff. But yeah, it's coming along okay. I kind of powered through the first 100 pages or so very quickly. And lately I haven't been writing as much on that book. I started another side project, which is an Amazon Vella project. Vella recently launched in the US, and it is a kind of short story subscription service that Amazon released. The idea is you're supposed to release stories in series that add up to a complete movement, kind of like episodes of a TV show or something like that. They do similar things, I think, on like Wattpad and other writing services. But anyway, I made a spin-off book. It doesn't necessarily have a title yet, but it follows the character Thea Marcos, who is my favorite. It's in first person, and it's set in the 1400s. So that book, I have 5 stories done for so far. I hope to publish them in the near future on Vella. And that is about 45 pages, I would say right now. So I have 2 concurrent Dust After Death projects. One is the main novel sequel, and the other is a kind of loosely related side project that I hope drives a little bit of attention to the books, We'll see. I don't know. When I read about how Vella is going for authors that published right away when it launched, I feel like some are a little bit frustrated. So I'm not sure how the service is working out so far, but I'm still going to try it, because you can always unpublish from Vella and then re-release it as a traditional novel if you choose to. So,
Definitely. That's great. I'm excited to know about that. I would also like to know if there is any kind of challenge that you face while writing this book, because we all know that writing is not an easy thing. It requires consistency, it requires a lot of time, effort, research, try, errors, etc., etc. So I'd like to know if there is any sort of challenges that you face while writing this novel, and how were you able to overcome them, and how does it take you? How long does it take you to finish this impressive novel of yours?
Yeah, that book took me a little over a year. I think I started it in 2019 and then finished it kind of at the beginning of 2020, and then had to edit and stuff like that. There were quite a few challenges because when I started writing, I don't outline. A lot of people have very specific outlines that they follow. And I'm sure you've heard the term before, but I'm like a by the seat of my pants writer, right? I kind of have a loose idea, I know where it's headed, and then I just write. So once I finished the first draft, there was a lot of stuff that didn't agree. Like the beginning of the book wouldn't match up with how it plays out in the end. The characters kind of changed their personalities later on. Midway through, when I feel like just tons of balls in the air without any resolution, it was absolutely overwhelming for me. For a while, I was thinking, how am I ever going to tie this all together? Am I going to leave way too many loose ends? You know, I think, and I'm not sure about all writers, but I think most writers, as they're completing a novel, have some insecurities about how it's going to play out in the long run. And honestly, you know, I'm very proud of this book, and you know, I appreciate it's gotten mostly good reviews. I appreciate the support of friends like you who have helped me get the word out about it. But even still, you know, when I read it, I find small errors that maybe I would have done differently or will do differently next time. I think that the most important thing when your goal is to be a writer and have finished novels is just to get a draft out, you know? So if you write a first draft, it's sloppy, it's unorganized, it's whatever it is, any number of bad adjectives you can come up with about it, at least it's there and you can work from there to fix it, you know? So for me, if I just get out a story completely, I can always go back and edit.
Yes.
Until it's what I wanted it to be, or at least good enough that I feel like I can put it out in the world and hopefully not have to make any major revisions in the future. Yeah. So book two, I hope is better, you know, or eventually I hope to write books that are better. You know, it's a constant process of learning, improving, reading, and trying to improve upon what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's actually great. You know, a friend of mine told me about that some time ago, and I'm also excited to learn from it about you. Okay, another sort of question I would like to ask you, which is much more important, is that, you know, could you please tell us what publishing is like for an independent published author? And you know, publishing is, it's actually it's a sort of I wouldn't say it's an easy thing to do. So I don't know if you can tell us what publishing is for an independent published author like yourself, and what are the challenges you encounter in terms of marketing your book? You know, what are the sort of challenges you've encountered so far on marketing, and what are the mediums you've utilized so far in promoting the book, if there is any?
Yeah, publishing the first time was kind of, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory through Amazon, but it's still, there's so much to figure out, you know. Formatting is difficult. Even when you format it in Word or whatever word processor you use, when you convert it to, you know, the .mobi or whatever the EPUB, the file formats that work for Amazon, a lot changes just physically in how it looks. You know, coming up with like a book cover. My brother is an artist. He did the cover for my book, but even the layout for putting the title over the image and all that, I did myself. That was pretty difficult to learn. I have to learn a little bit of Photoshop, a little bit of editing, a little bit of formatting, just to get a book out there, you know. Kind of the second time, third time, I'm sure will be much easier doing all the basic things. Once that's all in place, you kind of know what to expect. In terms of marketing is still the hardest thing. I think it's even harder than writing. It's not something I ever really thought about while writing a book. It was just like, I got to get this thing done. And then once you're done and you publish it, it's like, wow, no one will ever read this unless I can figure out how to get it out in the world. So that's still a work in progress. But I have learned, you know, I've run ads on Instagram. I tried to do Facebook ads, but Facebook, for some reason, doesn't like the ads that I've made or shuts down my profile whenever I try and submit them. I still haven't figured that out. I've run BookBub ads. I don't know if you've heard of BookBub, but it's like they email you book recommendations. Those I usually get, you know, I'll do like pay-per-click ads, and I'll usually get a handful of clicks every time I run an ad for a few days. It's not enough to make it super worthwhile, but I feel like it does get you a little bit of exposure. For me, by far, the best advertising that I've done is the Amazon built-in advertising on the AMS platform. You know, you can set up keywords. I like to do similar authors as keywords, things like vampires or horror as keywords, and that gets me a few sales every week still. At this point, I'm getting like 3 to 5 sales a week, and I feel like 90% of them are through Amazon ads. But I hope in the future to figure out ways to, you know, better reach an audience. And I also keep thinking to myself, if it just gets to the right readers, you know, who start talking about it, word of mouth will probably go a long way eventually. So I wonder.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And that's really very impressive. You know, marketing is one of those impressive things, very important when it comes to book publishing, and it's a great one. So the last but not the least sort of question here, it's what sort of advice would you give out to the writers who are still struggling to write in a theme of fiction, more specifically, or you know, people who are still struggling to complete the novel? What sort of advice can you give out to writers in this category?
Just keep doing it. Yeah, that's kind of all there is to it. Just keep writing. You know, if you're struggling with a certain book, maybe set that aside for a little while, try a different project, or maybe see if you can look at it through a different lens. Maybe try a different narrating approach or something like that. But realistically, you know, I personally feel there are many bad books that have been very popular in my lifetime. There's many good books that never find an audience at all. You know, to me, that's a very encouraging thought. Like, it doesn't matter if I put out my best quality work, it's going to be better than some work that's very popular, I personally believe, you know. Obviously, there's an audience that might disagree with me on that, but to me, that's a very empowering thought. If I do my very best book, it's not going to be the worst book that was ever made. Hopefully, it will be among the best, you know? So that's kind of all I think, is you just have to keep doing it, and then hopefully one day you'll find success. The first hurdle really is completing something and putting it out there. And then, as you know, you have to work and keep releasing things and build your body of work until eventually, hopefully, you know, there's a large audience for your work. So, yeah.
Actually, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you, because as you were speaking, it made me remember a particular novel. I went to a particular bookstore to get a book of poem. When I entered the store, I told them that, you know, I want to buy a book of poem. Any poem you have, just give it to me. Because then I was still meditating on publishing my first book of the Dead. So they gave me a book, a short book of I think 60 pages thereabout, a book of poem. So I collected it. They asked, I asked them for the price. I said, and I gave it to them. Then I went back home. When I get home, I opened the book. It's a book of poems, and I was reading it. I'm sorry to say this, it is absolutely nonsense. I'm very sorry it's nonsense, because you know, I was a fresh poet. When I read through it, I was like, can you imagine? Look at what this person writes. Can you imagine? And they sold it for me 400 naira. Something like that was what actually motivated me to go and publish Extract of the Dead. I was like, if they can sell this, I'm sorry to use the word trash, for 400 naira, then I think I need to get it. Because about the thing the person actually have is that the person have a kind of because I read in the acknowledgement, it was, you know, it was appreciating the wife of the governor of my state. It was mentioning their name, it was like I give my thanks to this person, my thanks to that person. I was like, oh, probably it's because of this person that you're able to get your book out. It's actually it actually motivated me, because when I read it, I was like, oh God, this cannot be this. This cannot be a poem. And I was really motivated to put out my poem up there, because I was like, if this person can write this and it's appreciated this manner and it can be sold for 400 naira, then I need to write my home book.
Absolutely.
I think that's really fantastic about it.
Absolutely. That's exactly how I feel too. Didn't you have another book of poetry coming out soon? I feel like I remember.
Yes, I have. Yes, Oxford Kismet or Impediment is coming out this month. Next month. I'm gonna publish it this month. So once I get it published, I'll start with the promotion, etc. The designer is currently working on the design. That's just the issue I have currently. When we publish, I think I can call myself, a published author of 3 books.
Awesome. Yeah, congratulations. That's exciting. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Gregory.
Yeah.
So here, viewers, thank you for watching my interview with Dr. Ramsey, the author of Just After Death, Manual of the Mage. This book is currently available on Amazon. You can get it via the description below. I left a link where you can purchase it in the description part of this video. If you'd like to get it, it's very fantastic. It's a vampire adventure. It's something you enjoy reading. It's something good for you if you're an archaeologist, if you're literature into twat time. I think it's something you really enjoy. I really recommend it. Try and check it out there. Just After Death, Manual of the Mage, Book 1 by George Ramsey. Thank you so much, Mr. Georgie. But before we move on, before we close the interview, could you give us another presentation? The coffin swings open for me. Let's sing it and let's end the interview. I think that'll be fine that way.
One more round? Sure thing.
One more round. Let's entertain the viewers. The viewers that are able to wait to this time to the end of the video. It's not easy to wait to the end of the YouTube video. So let's give them some sort of entertainment, at least.
I like how you think. Sounds good to me. So
yeah,
thank you again for having me on this interview. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see the video. And here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
The coffin swings open for me tonight, and I float gently to my feet, and I don't have a care. There's not a care in the world, for so take to the street with caution and stride confidently very often, 'cause the cat just gotta eat, yeah, I just gotta drink, 'cause I'm just an animal who feeds on mammals, the ones who bleed. I'm just an animal who feeds on mammals, the ones who bleed.
That's fantastic.
Thanks,
That's
Peter.
great. Thank you so much for joining me in the interview. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to the publication of your next book. When it's out here, I'll be glad to review it and also have another sort of interview with you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I of course look forward to staying in contact with you from now on. Yeah, I appreciate our friendship a lot.